Surrealism is the business of poets who cannot benefit by surrealism. It was the first appearance of the Logos that said the public be damned, by which he did not mean that they did not matter or that he wanted to be crucified by them, but that really he did not have a word to say to them. This was surrealism. But the business of ignoring the public is the business of the poet and not the surrealism of the poet. The surrealism of the poet could not write words. To be lost in a crowd of images, of metaphors, whatever they were, of words, this is a better surrender of the poet who is lost in a crowd of them, finally. 2. To define a metaphor against the crowd of people that protest against them. This is neither of our businesses. It is as if nothing in the world existed except metaphors, linkings between things, or as if all our words without things above them were meaningless. Personify, you say. It is less abstract to make a person out of a sound. But the Word was the Word, not because he was personified, but because he was a personification, as if he were human. To proclaim his humanity is to lie, to pretend that he was not the Word, that he was not created to explain the language where we were born across, temporarily and witlessless, in our prayers. 3. Poor bastards trying to get through hell in a hurry. Pray for them bastards who are not patient enough to listen. The dying leaves of a moving tree, a bleeding tree, in a crowd of imaginary images. Pray for them poor bastards who are too crowded to listen. An angle cutting off each surface up to the prayer, the poem, the messages. An angle of the mind, meaning to do this. They go through life till the next morning, as we all do, but constantly, as if the shimmering before them were not hell, but the reach of something. Teach. Taught, as a wire which reaches, a silver wire which reaches from the end of the beautiful as if elsewhere. A metaphor. Metaphors are not for humans. The wires dance in the wind of the noise our poems make, the noise without an audience, because the poems were written for ghosts. The ghosts the poems were written for are the ghosts of the poems. We have it second hand. They cannot hear the noise they have been making. Yet it is not a simple process like a mirror or a radio. They try to give us circuits to see them, to hear them, teaching an audience. The wire in the rose is beautiful. 5. The motion of the afterlife of the poem. Define ghosts as an India rubber eraser created to erase their own past. The motion of the afterlife, and you will think immediately of a photograph, the ghost of it defined as a blob of ectoplasm, an anti-image. An anti-image as if merely by being dead it could make the motions of what it was to be apparent. An argument between the dead and the living. 6. The poet thinks continually of strategies, of how he can win out against the poem, seeking experience for specific instances, drawing upon the pulp of the brain and the legs and the arms and the motion of the poet, making him see things that can be conveyed through their words, or disbelief too, seeking experience for specific instances, and in the gradual lack of the beautiful, the lock of the door before him, a new Eurydice stepping up to him, punning her way through its hell. They won't come through, nothing comes through, the death of every poem and every line, the argument continues. 7. Nothingness is alive in the eyes of the beloved. He wears the clothes wherein he walks naked. He is fame. sounded ahead by the trumpets of unreason, barely accounted for by the senses. He is what he is because he is never where he is. I cannot proclaim him, for he is not mine. Eros, amor, fili love. His body is more abstract than all the messages my body sends my brain of him, and he is human. I cannot proclaim starlight, for it is never in the same place. I can write a poem about him 100 times, but he is not there. The mere numbers prevent his appearance, as the names Eros, Amor, fili love, starlight. For his fame is as the fame of what? I have not words for him. 8. Descends to the real by a roped ladder. The soul also goes there, solely, not love, beyond the thought of God. I mean the thought of thinking about God. Naturally, I mean the real God. Disregards all other images as you disregard the parts of words in a poem. The logos crying to be healed from his Godhead, his dismay, disappears within the flat iron of existence that smooths out all the words in the poem, imparts them, makes them real at the next day. And as the words heal, I did not mean the real God. 9. If you see him everywhere or exactly nowhere, he becomes as it were at the circumference of a circle that has no point but the boundary of your desire, coming to a point. And the human witness of this passion is rightly stunned by the incongruity of it, lifting a human being into a metaphor. All that we do in bed, or sleep, or sex, is limited by this circle, which can only be personally defined. On the outside of it is what everybody talks about. On the outside of it are the dead that try to talk. Once you try to embrace an absolute geometric circle, the naked lost stays with you like a picture echoing